Saetia, thank you guys for joining me here today. Just if you could introduce yourselves, we can also share this mic, Billy, if you'd like. But yeah, go ahead.
Hello, I am Billy. I am the singer in Saetia.
Hey, I'm Adam. I play guitar in Saetia.
I'm Colin. I play bass in Saetia.
Perfect, thank you, and welcome to WKDU. Thank you again for joining me this morning. Billy, this is not your first time here, apparently, which I found so crazy to find that out. If you want to talk about just kind of how you've been here before, that'd be awesome.
So in a separate life, I make electronic music, and I've played the electronic music marathon up here at KDU a bunch of times, and I love it here. I went straight to the record room, which is what I would normally do here. So it's great to be back.
Thank you, and I hope you guys also enjoyed the record room. Everybody loves it in there.
It's pretty nuts.
I know. Wait, did you see anything cool? That you wouldn't have found anywhere else, or?
I didn't get to dive in
Fair
nearly
enough.
as much as Billy, because he kept distracting me by pulling out Red Hot Chili Peppers records he thought I would like. But
Aside from Adam Marino's favorite Red Hot Chili Peppers album, we found the Jungle Man 12-inch, which I know is high on his want list. I was also impressed by the number of Residence albums that are in there. It's like every Residence album that I've ever seen. So.
Yeah. Let me just wait. Okay. We have some quirky little records in there. But the reason that you guys are in Philly today together is you're playing Dilly Dally Fest 2. How did that come about for you guys? Did somebody reach out, or if you just want to give the story.
They reached out to us actually last year to see if we wanted to play, and it just didn't work out with our schedules and timing. So when they were planning this year, they hit us up on Instagram and
Gotcha.
Asked if we were able to do it. And it just worked out timing-wise. So
Perfect.
Here we are.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm very excited for tonight. But you guys have played in Philly since coming back together as a band last year, if I'm not mistaken.
almost 2 years ago at this point.
Okay.
It was, November 22?
22.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, we played at the First Unitarian Church.
Is that that's your first time playing there, or?
Saetia, yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I know you've played there, right, with Hot Cross?
Yeah, I played there with Hot Cross.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Did the Fiction make it there?
No, we never did. So.
And I had been to shows there, but it was my first time ever
Play.
playing the church, yeah.
Yeah, the church is a very iconic venue in
It
this
is.
city, and I feel like around the world.
We were there last night, actually. We we
okay.
went and saw Chat Pile play.
That was last night.
Yeah,
And I missed it. Okay. How was that show?
it was amazing.
It was really good.
Yeah. What's the lead singer's name? The vocalist.
Oh, Reagan Bush or Bush Reagan or something like that.
Reagan. But yeah, very expressive front man.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lots of facts during the show.
Yeah.
Really?
Learned a lot about Philadelphia.
He does his research. Yeah, he seems to know more about the city than I do, and I've been here. Next year I will have been here 20 years, and I think he knows more about the city and the
He talks
movies
about
here.
he does a lot of movie trivia and then talks about the town he's in, and it's
Okay.
just
He's the consummate front man. I would
Yeah.
never do that level of research about any place. So.
But that's what you want, coming to a city and you see the band kind of cares about it. That's so funny that he
Yeah.
was doing all that. But yeah, First Unitarian is where R5 book shows, but before that was Stalag 13 back in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Were you guys ever visitors of Stalag 13?
we
Several
played there.
times.
We
Yeah.
certainly did. Yeah, we stayed. That's right. We played there. I want to say we played there twice, and then one time we were supposed to play there, but it got canceled because we were driving through a blizzard. It was supposed to be the last show of a tour that we were doing with a band called You and I, and we canceled on the way. I remember we were driving down the road, and the person that was in the passenger seat was scraping ice off, hanging out the window and scraping ice off the windshield as we were driving. And then we were we should probably just not do this. This is
Yeah.
probably not the best idea. But that's a really good snapshot of what life in Saetia was like in 1998. Somebody was driving while the other person was trying to put the van together, make sure it
Yeah.
didn't fall apart.
And we'd always make sure we would, that tour, we toured the Midwest in December and January. That's what we'd always
That's
do.
what we would normally do because we were in college, so we had to go when we had breaks,
Oh,
and
right.
inevitably the breaks were during blizzard time. So
But
we
we
would
never
drive
thought, let's go south. We're always,
or
let's
west.
go where it's
Yeah,
colder
yeah.
than New York.
We'll go to the Midwest or we'll go.
Yeah,
north.
let's go where the blizzards happen all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, so what did that tour consist of? You said the Midwest. Like, which cities would you say?
So, if I remember correctly, I think the first show we played was somewhere in New Jersey. Then we hit, I want to say Michigan.
Was that the tour with the infamous one for one show?
No, that was the
was
year
heading-
before.
yeah, that was heading south.
Virginia. Actually, that one we did actually go where it's warmer. But yeah, I think we did like, if I remember correctly, like we definitely did Chicago. We played the Fireside Bowl, which was like at the time that was like might as well be playing like Madison Square Garden. That was like the
Yeah.
biggest
It was huge
thing.
for us.
It's hilarious seeing pictures of it now. Like, you know, like from back in the day, you realize like it was like not quite as big as you remembered it. But
Yep.
we played Minnesota at this place called, was it Castle Doom or something like that?
I don't.
It was a basement show.
It's amazing that you remember.
I was
it.
just gonna say your memory, like you're full of these.
This dude is really good.
I'm a
way
school
better than me.
teacher, so I have to remember
Oh, okay.
150 names every year. So
Yep,
like, you
yep.
know, I've always been kind of good at that.
But that tour just went out to California, correct?
No,
No,
that
no.
tour just went to, I think the farthest west we went was Minnesota because
Okay.
it's just a week.
We did probably Madison, Wisconsin too. Or
Oh, yes, we
Milwaukee.
did Madison, Wisconsin. Tom, who's now in Saetia but was in UNI at the time, put his foot, it was an attic show, and he put his foot through the floor. So it was that kind of place, which
wow.
it was an awesome place to play, though. And then
Yeah.
the show before we were supposed to play Stalag was in Columbus, Ohio, at a place called the Legion of Doom. And that show, we had just lost our friend Alex, who was the original bass player for the band. So we were all kind of dealing with it. And it was a long, you know, even though it was only a week, it felt like a very long tour. And I think emotions got to a lot of people. And, you know, without going too deep into it, like we weren't able to finish the show. And tensions were a little high. I may have put my fist through a wall in the Legion of Doom kitchen, which they were very cool about. And so it was just kind of a weird scene. Then we're like, all right, we're going to Stalag, and we always had good shows there. But then,
The blizzard.
yeah, the blizzard hit, so we weren't able to do that.
That was a fraught time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine for sure. But the thing that you said is that they were like very cool with it, and I think that was kind of like being involved in the DIY scene, the punk scene in general. There's like such a sense of community. At least still today there is, and I'm sure there was back then. And I always feel like, I mean, I'm not in any bands, but I always wonder, do you guys feel like that community and like the energy associated with that community ever influenced your creativity in making music? Or like was there ever a consideration for like just the atmosphere that you were in?
I mean, I don't know if it led to the creativity, but it was definitely, you know, it was just part of the world that we were in. So it was the scene, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that's just what we were surrounded by, and we didn't think about anything else.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
I think if you want to talk about it creatively, I think we had like a cohort of bands that we operated with a lot. So you and I was one of them, and there was, you know, bands in New York like the States of Seeds and Judas
Closure.
Iscariot, Closure. Like we all, so for example, like us and Closure, our LPs came out pretty much one after another, and then the States of Seeds as well. All three of those albums were recorded like at the same place. We all played shows together. We were all on the same label. So there was, I don't know that we acknowledged it the way it may have otherwise been. Like we were like this like crew that was like pushing this thing out there. So I don't think we were like consciously doing that, but I think just by virtue of proximity and being around each other and talking about music and knowing what each other was into and being like, wow, that Closure record is amazing. Like, these are you and I guys. Like, what is this? Like, so I think it had like probably an unspoken influence. Not that that anyone was trying to do what anyone else was doing, but everyone seemed to simultaneously tap into this kind of sound where we were interpreting what we were hearing and being influenced by it, but making it our own. And that's what Saetia was. That's what Closure was. That's what the States of Seeds was. There were a variety of influences, and I think we all fed off each other in that way. So given that we all operated in that same sort of DIY community, I think like it just kind of naturally happened. But to Adam's point, I don't think we like sought out inspiration in these areas on purpose. It was just the world that we sort of operated in and the people that we operated in, operated with.
Yeah, it just like it was gonna happen regardless, kind of thing. That makes sense. Yeah, I guess I feel like that's a very big point that a lot of bands have. Is like their major influences aren't like these like really big bands. It's like the people around them, and like the other bands that are just trying to do what they're doing and making music. And like especially back then, like there's so many I don't really know if you could just give me an idea of like how did you find out about like other bands in other cities without like I know the internet is like a big thing these days, but like back then I'm sure touring bands would like bring other bands stuff with them, I assume. Stuff like that. Like is that how that translated?
I think for all of us it was probably a little different like entryway. So
I mean, I guess if you're specifically talking about like this scene of music, I think it was a lot of bands that would just, there would be a distro that would come to the show, or a band on tour that maybe you were going to see one band, but there was this other band from wherever coming on the show as well, and then you'd learn about them and you'd buy their record, and then maybe you're looking at their thank you list and you're like, oh, what's that band about? And then you go
kinda keep going.
right, yeah. It's like a rabbit hole that you can go
it's
down.
a slower moving rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So like,
I also think it helped that like our old guitar player used to book shows at ABC No Rio, which was the big DIY space in New York City, and our current drummer, former bass player Steve, he kind of took up that mantle also and booked shows. So like bands are looking to play New York City, if they're in like our scene, they're going to play ABC, and then you become friends with them or you learn about their music, and then next time you're in their neighborhood, they want to reciprocate and then help you out with shows. So I think that helped a lot too.
I think also we'd be remiss to not mention that fanzines and college radio played an enormous role in underground music, not just the music that we play, but in general. I think I was remarking to you earlier that it's amazing to see WKDU as it is, because to us, this is kind of like a time capsule. Like seeing like, a college radio station with like tons of posters and stickers and flyers everywhere and a record room and, analog equipment and all this stuff. And you're not just going to someone's house and like streaming out of a bedroom is really kind of gratifying and fulfilling to see that it's still happening and you guys are making it happen, because I would never have heard hardcore punk if it wasn't for Seton Hall College Radio or WSOU or WNYU, shout to our alma mater.
Yeah, I mean, basically, before Saetia ever played a show, our first show was at ABC No Rio, but really our first show was on air at
WNYU.
At NYU Crucial Chaos. So walking in here today, it was like time machine. I just felt like I was walking into NYU radio station.
Yeah, so college radio, if you tuned in at the right time, you might hear like an ebullition record, and you're like, wait, manumission? Okay, I'm gonna write that down. Like, what is that? And then you go from the radio station and what you heard there, and you pick up like Maximum Rock and Roll, which is like a huge punk fanzine that existed for decades and decades and decades, and they had a classified section. I don't know if people still know what classified sections are, but they're these like little tiny advertisements in the back of publications way back when, and there'd be pages. The classified section would be like that thick, and you'd be able to send money in the mail, well-concealed cash, as it were, and you'd hope that a record would show up like 6 weeks later that you ordered, and that's kind of how it worked. And it was like, basically you were putting your faith and your dollars in this envelope, right, your allowance money, and hoping that someone was actually going to receive it and send you the record. But that's kind of how it worked. It was like you found people at shows that knew stuff that you didn't, and you spoke to them, and people sold records at shows, and then it was kind of like you had to be out in the world and interacting with the world and the scene to know about the scene. Like it kind of it supported itself. You didn't, to your point, like the internet wasn't a thing. So it was kind of like you had to be out and actually speaking with people in person.
Yeah. No, I think that is the beauty of it too, is like if you really wanted to put yourself in the scene, you had to go and physically be there, which I think is awesome. But I appreciate your remarks about WKDU, because my big thing of being here is like maintaining it as it was and kind of keeping that tradition of like the older look and like, I don't know, just seeing, like you said, like college radio, people are like dismantling them these days. And we're like trying to bolster ourselves up and be like, no, like stay out.
Yeah.
So I appreciate hearing that it is reminiscent somewhat of what it was in the 90s and such. But so you guys technically met through college radio, would you say? In a sense,
That-
or
I think that's fair. I think the majority of us met. Adam and I sort of grew up together. We met each other as teenagers, and I worked at a Boston Chicken in Fresh Meadows, and Adam worked across the street. This is before, and I'm very specifically saying Boston Chicken because the Boston Market was not yet a thing. Thank you very much. It was only Boston Chicken for the OGs. And Adam worked across the street at a Haagen-Dazs, similar to Ian Mackay and Henry Rollins, way back when. So we would sort of trade chicken and cornbread for like ice cream at various points, and that's how we sort of got to know each other and talked about music and would go to shows together.
Skate together.
And then these guys, the rest of them I met. We all met at WNYU at Crucial Chaos, which was on Thursday night. It was like the hardcore punk radio show, and it was kind of like you kind of knew you were going to meet people that were interested in what you were interested in. It was kind of you had a captive audience, so as a student, you could sort of show up to where the radio station was and just take an elevator up and be in the studio. And so we all sort of would gravitate there every Thursday. It became like kind of the honeycomb hideout for like the punk kids at NYU, and that's where it happened.
Yeah, I was good friends with Alex, who I mentioned earlier, the original bass player of Saetia, and like we had like jammed together, like doing like "Sick of It All" and "Youth Today" covers, stuff like that. And then he told me, he's like, "Yeah, just join this band." And I don't even think they had a name, but he played me some demos, and it sounded like nothing I'd heard because I was mostly listening to like "Sick of It All" and "Youth Today" and stuff like that. And I think simultaneously, I don't even remember if he introduced us or I worked at the bookstore at NYU, and I think I was wearing like a Joy Division t-shirt or something like that. And Billy just, I tend to be very shy around people. Billy will totally strike up a conversation. So I was like, who is this weird guy? But, it's like, he's got good taste in music. And then our worlds just seem to revolve. Once again, like if you're part of a scene, even if it's like a little spread out, eventually, gravity is going to bring you all together. Yeah. And then when Alex left, Billy called me up and was like, hey, Alex just left the band. Do you want to play bass? And I never played bass before, but I played guitar. I was like,
perfect.
I was like, sure. And I'll never forget, Billy goes, just so you know, we have a few people we're looking at right now. And I was like, oh, damn, I gotta learn these songs. I gotta do really good. So I busted my rear to learn all the songs. And then I walk into practice, and it wasn't even like an audition. It was like, all right, so I'm playing in the band now. And I asked, I think I asked Greg, who's our original drummer, and I was like, yeah, so who else were you guys looking at? I was like, we didn't have anybody. It's like, damn it, Billy.
I was about to ask, like, Adam, do you remember who we were looking at?
I don't remember.
I don't think they existed.
No. I just remember it was like Alex left and then Colin was in the band, and that was it.
It worked though, right? You practiced.
I did. Sorry.
yeah, I mean, lie or not, it worked in your favor. So that's awesome. Okay, so it just kind of like started piecing itself together, basically, which I feel like is most stories of bands coming together. But speaking of your Joy Division T-shirt, I'm assuming that before you guys started playing this music, were you into this type of music or like hardcore punk and all that stuff, or were your interests elsewhere?
Everyone was kind of, I think the common thread, we were all into hardcore, but some of us were more into hip hop, and some of us were more into metal, and some of us more into like, stuff coming out of the UK. So, but yeah, like I'd say New York hardcore was at the root for all of us. And then, I think all these other outside influences played into our sound.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, and I know when I was younger, I would assume this about bands. Like, I would think like, like Fugazi would only listen to DC hardcore in the band, right? And it's like, in our band, like, we did listen to hardcore, but we also listened to like, I don't know, a lot of Britpop, a lot of like, mentioned Joy Division, New Order, stuff like that. Like it was pretty varied, like, soul, jazz, like just mix it up. But I feel like the Venn diagram, like Adam was saying, that center is like New York hardcore. So for like all the flowers and poetry of Saetia, it's like you put on Clobbering Time, the Sick of It All, like someone's getting hurt. It's like, we still, that's like our common root.
Gotcha. Okay. That I feel like that makes sense. Is like that's the root of it, a kind of the Venn diagram, but it all spreads out eventually. Because I feel I had a band in here on Thursday who makes like screamo, and they said that they listen to classical music, and they like jazz, and I was like, that's awesome. I think
Those
it's
are our
cool.
people.
Yeah, those, and because like I feel like, and you could totally hear the influence after they said that. I was like, oh, and I re-listened to the music. I could hear like the swelling of classical music
Yeah.
in their screamo or whatever. So yeah, it was crazy. But so that was like the formation, kind of how you guys got together. Can you walk me through how a reunion kind of came up, and like,
Yeah.
were there any motivators or like hesitations when first throwing the idea around?
So this is actually kind of funny because over the year, so Saetia broke up in 1999, and we all sort of had other bands subsequent to that. But over the years, all of us, I think individually, would just kind of get random emails from people like, when will Saetia play again? Will Saetia ever play again? Do you have shirts left over? Or, are there records? Can I buy something? And it was always like, it was sort of this pretty consistent stream of notes that we would get from folks asking about it. And at some point I just started to kind of like tune it out, because I was like, all right, this is just like a never gonna happen kind of thing. And I'm quoted widely and publicly about how this is never gonna happen. So sometimes you eat crow, right? But in about 2015, a gentleman by the name of Jeremy Bohm reached out to me, and I think it was on Facebook, and I tell him like he must have caught me in a good mood that day, because typically I would just be like on to the next thing. I'm not even going to respond to this. But he wrote me this really earnest and really nice note that actually got my attention. And it was like, look, I'm in this band Touche Amore. I also do this label. I really love Saetia. I think Saetia's music needs sort of a proper reissue, like a really nice package. I would really like to work on it with you guys. Can you either put me in touch with the rest of the band and I'll email all of you, or if you can reach out to the band members and see like if anyone's interested in doing this. And so, like I said, he must have caught me in a good mood that day. And I was like, you know what? I haven't spoken to these guys in forever. Let me just blast this out and see what comes back. And I got responses pretty quickly, as I remember, where people were like, okay, let's talk to this guy. Let's see what's up. And then it started with, okay, well, we're going to do this reissue, but we're never going to play. And then it was, we're going to do this reissue, and we're talking, and we're actually enjoying talking to each other, and we want to be friends again. Maybe we should like meet up. And so we did that. And then it was like, all right, well, if we're going to meet up, maybe we should see if we can still play the songs. Wouldn't that be funny? And as I'm telling this, I realized I think I was being manipulated at the time, but that's fine.
Most certainly.
Yes. And then gradually we sort of got into the studio. It sounded okay. And we were like, maybe we could get together and raise a lot of money. Like maybe we could do something like that. And the record came out great. And we had all these plans. And we were like, let's do this thing. Let's get in the studio and practice. And then March of 2020, we all know what happens. The world shuts down. Nothing happens for a good year and a half. When the world starts to open up a little bit, we start to sort of revisit the conversations, and we were like, you know what? This is a grim place. Like, if we can use this to do some good, let's start there. Let's see what we can do. And before we knew it, Adam sort of became band manager, booking agent, merch guy, like everything. Adam is kind of the center console of everything we do. And here we are. It just kind of worked out. We booked shows in New York, and we were like, oh, it would be great if we got 100 people at each show. They're probably going to be our age and be really bored, but hey, now we've done it. And then this show is sold out in like 8 seconds, and we're like, okay, well, maybe there's something happening here. And we ended up raising a ton of money for charities, and we just went from there. And we were like, you know what? It was really fun. We enjoyed it. Let's continue doing this like periodically and seeing when we can raise money and use what we do to do something good. Like use the music to do something positive. And here we are, 3 years later. Adam, what did I leave out?
I think that you said everything perfectly. Okay. I think the one thing I was going to add is that because of the doing the release with Jeremy on the label, that kind of prompted me starting an Instagram account for the band, as a kind of like a promotion tool,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And when we had this kind of, when we were discussing playing the possibility of doing a show, we were like, well, let's just, like as Billy said, like let's get in a room together. We haven't played together since 1999, right? And
Yeah.
for me, longer because I had left the band at a certain point. So we got into the room, and at I live in California now, so I happen to be out on the East Coast visiting family. So we took that opportunity of me being here to get together. But Steve couldn't play that weekend, so we had our friend Chris Enriquez, who played in a band called On the Might of Princes, and he plays in a million other bands. He was gracious enough to like learn 2 or 3 of the songs just so we can get in a room and just see if it
Bang it
felt
out.
good. So that night we had rented a rehearsal space in Brooklyn, and we got together, and we played, and Billy wasn't even, he's like walked in the room, he's like, I'm not gonna sing probably, I'm just gonna kind of be here and listen. And within 4 seconds of the first song, he's like screaming in the corner. We're like, whoa,
Yeah.
but we took a photo at the end of that, and like just of us together.
Oh, yeah.
And I made a comment, like I posted it that night or that night actually, and I just said it was like, just like riding a bike, that you haven't been on in 23 years or something.
Yeah.
And the response to that photo was like that. I think the response to that photo made us go, whoa, like
yeah.
maybe we should play a show,
Yeah.
and that really was the moment that I think for all of us, we had no idea like Brooklyn Vegan picked up a story about that photo, and it was just like blew up, and I think it all made us kind of go, maybe we should do this, and we just planned on doing one show, and that led to 5 shows in 1 week, and
Wow.
it was just, and here we are 2 years later, like almost exactly
It
to
is
the
almost
week,
exactly
to the week 2 years later.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, because I was going to ask, like, how did the reception of you guys coming back differ from your expectations? Was it like
Well, we had
Yeah.
no
Yeah,
expectations.
yeah. Like I said, my expectation was it was going to be like a bunch of hardcore retirees, like a retirement community, and that would have been fine, but we wouldn't have kept doing it.
yeah.
But the thing that was most surprising to me that we've spoken about is just the amount of young people.
Yeah.
Like the average age of the audience is still like 18, and I'm like, it's almost like we like time moved on, but like Saetia stayed sort of in this place that resonated to like people who were our age when we were making the music, and that's been the most inspiring part of it, has been seeing the amount of young folks to us that are coming out and really enthusiastic about it. And I think that's, for me, that's what's really sustained my interest in doing it, is the amount of people that we're meeting,
Right.
and a better understanding what the band does for them.
The other thing I would add to that, besides the youth of so many people in the audience, just the diversity in the audience is
Yeah.
way bigger than it was when we were playing. Like the scene that we were in, not that the hardcore scene in general, but definitely I feel like the kind of sub scene that we were a part of tended to be very male, very white, and I would say upper middle class. And what's been really interesting from those first shows at Vitus through like when we played up in Toronto over the summer, it's just like the diversity when it comes to race, economic class, gender, sexuality. It's just like, it's really inspiring because it, as progressive as I think a lot of us wanted to be or claimed to be back then, like it wasn't represented in who was actually going to these shows, or who I guess felt welcome going to these shows. So it's been really wonderful seeing that as well.
Yeah, I would say there's been a huge push, I think, for like the diversifying the scene, and especially in this genre. I think most bands that I know personally are like queer people, and at least in Philly, a lot of queer people are making this type of music, which I think is awesome, and it's become a safe space for a lot of people. But I do just have to do a quick little reminder to everybody that we are listening to WKDU Philadelphia 91.7 FM. My name is Liv, and I'm here with Saetia, about halfway through our interview here, just talking about a bunch of stuff. But getting back to you guys, like your reception, that night in Brooklyn when you first you got that rehearsal space. When you guys started, I know you said like within 4 seconds, like he started screaming. Was there like an energy in the room? Was like anything different, or did it kind of just feel like you were back?
I would say it's something that, for me at least, when I was younger, I probably would have made fun of somebody my age feeling what I was feeling at that moment.
Yeah.
But, screw that. You get old and you realize these things are important. And I'm not going to say like, oh yeah, it was like 1998 again, but there was this real sense of like, this is something that, meant the world to me. And whether it's for whatever reason, like you just kind of like compartmentalize it because, you get a career, you start a family, you have new friends, you have new bands, things like that. And that moment from, like, we opened up with the first song on the LP, which just starts off with feedback, and then drummer counts us in, and as soon as you hear that, it's like, it's amazing. And for some reason, Adam mentioned that Billy was screaming in the corner. I just remember there's a rehearsal studio, and there's a keyboard, and I don't know if you were using it as like almost like a podium, but he was standing behind this keyboard, and he was on my side. I kind of turned around, and he's just screaming like a madman, like possessed. And I looked at the other guys, and I was just like, this is amazing. And even if this is all we ever do, at least we have this moment. It was great.
Would you say, is that how you guys kind of felt in the same boat?
Yeah, it was just an exciting feeling, just having not played those songs in so long, and then hearing them again. And I feel like, obviously, with time and the fact that all of us have played in multiple bands since, it's not like Saetia ended and then we never did anything musically again. So the fact that we were all continuously playing music in bands and touring, and just with 20 years of that kind of experience, you become a better musician. And so even though, those couple of minutes in that first time, it just sounded way more powerful than I remembered it sounding back then, because I just think of us being better players,
Yeah.
We also tuned beforehand, which helped a lot. So.
We also didn't break 8 strings within the first 30 seconds,
yes,
too.
I'm going to say something that's going to sound really Pollyanna, but I think that, being in a band is a very specific type of creative energy that you share with people that most often you're really close with in some way. There's like a context of your relationship outside the band, but you have this thing that you share. This is like this special creative outlet that you end up in sync. And I think those are the kind of things that tend to live on. Like the energy of that day and the shows now very much remind me of being in sync with these guys when we had done it the first time around. But there's this new context of like, everybody's better at their instruments. We're operating more thoughtfully, perhaps more democratically. We're doing this on our terms. Like, there's no pressure. It's like, when we want to play, we play. If we can't play, it's cool. And I think that we've been able to do this, but also build our interpersonal relationships in a new context where, it's not just a bunch of college kids. Now it's a bunch of men that are raising kids and like have careers, and like maybe they own their own business or trying to, or, there's different goals and different things that factor into our other lives, but we have this thing that's in this capsule. It's like, it's here. It's like in bubble wrap where like the magic happens. And I think using the music as a vehicle to sort of rekindle our friendships, it has been like such a gift. And I think that the personal chemistry that we have and the way we care about each other is what makes Saetia what it is now and makes it different than what it was then. And, I speak for myself, but it's been such a special experience just being friends with these guys again. And by friends, I mean, we talk like every day. Like literally, it's like we're back in undergrad and we're meeting for lunch, only now it's like on WhatsApp, where we're having a go at one another, or like making plans, or Adam's like, no one's responded to this email. Like, I need an answer, right? Like, whatever it is, it's amazing to have this, and it's kind of like, middle-aged guys get together, they go on fishing trips a couple times a year, or they go climb a mountain. We play a DIY show. You know what I mean? Like we agree to fly someplace, and we play, and we experience that city together, and it's like this thing that happens, and then we're on to the next thing, and we've done some good, we've met some people, and it's just been a really fulfilling experience in a way that could not have happened the way it did, the way it does now then, because we're just in different stages in life and approaching it in a really free way. And there's no better way to do music than to feel free and not feel pressure. And I think that has really created something special the second time around, that we have the same name that we used then. We have different people in the band and a different chemistry and a different energy. And it's renewing itself in a comprehensive way, not just in a musical way, not just in a, hey, people want to see us, so we're going to go please those people. I think we please ourselves first. And when this arrangement, if it were to no longer please ourselves, I think that's when we would be like, all right, you know what? We've hit where we're going to be, and we're going to move on with our lives and do something else. But for now, it's still something that we really value. It's still something that's really pleasing to us. And I think that's really the key.
And I think having that, besides being better musicians 20 years later, just being more mature individuals, and being able to have the discussion of like, look, if 4 out of 5 of us are on board with something, but one person isn't, it just gets dropped, right? It's like it has to be all 5 of us that feel like we want to get behind whatever it is, a show, an organization, a T-shirt design, whatever it is. Like we all want to feel good about it, because if one person doesn't feel good, then that starts the downward feeling of like, oh, well, I didn't really want to do that. And, so, from the jump, it's been like, we're going to agree on everything or it just doesn't happen. And it's made for such a pleasant, experience with everything. Because it's just not, you don't even question it. It's like that, Colin doesn't want to do that thing. We're not going to do it, and you move on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's because then that definitely is different from, I would assume, back when you guys were playing in the 90s and stuff like that.
Yeah, probably there was probably some more like passive aggressive behavior and a little bit more mean spirited ribbing to each other, where it's like now it's just like the atmosphere is so much more relaxed and kind, and like we still make fun of each other, but it's in a loving way.
Yeah, of course.
I also think that when we were around the first time, we were not only operating in a certain community, but we were also like part of that community. Like we were very active members of that community. As Colin said, like at least 4 out of the 5 of us, or 3 out of the 5 of us, had some role in like a DIY space. Like I was on the collective, other people were booking shows, other people, Steve was running the radio show where we all met. It ended up just being Steve's radio show after a while. Like, you know what I mean? So we were all like very active in, creating a structure for this world to exist locally. Whereas now, and I'm only going to speak for myself here, but I consider myself like a guest. Like I'm not as fully engaged in the DIY punk world as I was then. I'm aware of it and appreciative of it, and I value it, and I would never sort of turn away from it. But I'm not booking shows. I'm not part of a collective. I'm not doing these things. I'm not like hitting it 24/7 the way we all used to. And for me, like feeling like a guest, I want to be like the best version of myself, and I want us to be the best version of ourselves as guests, because it's no longer our scene. We have been like graciously welcomed back into a community that has moved on for 30 years, and is doing something completely different now, just as valuable, but just different. And so for me, it's like remembering that this isn't really, it's a community that I'm welcome in, but it's also not my community. It's a community where I am a visiting scholar. You know what I mean? Like we're not in it. We're operating within it, but we're operating within it as like outsiders, in my opinion. Not all of us. I think, Tom and Steve are very much involved, but I think the rest of us like kind of come in and out as we do this. And so for that reason, like I think sort of the democratic nature of what we do, and ultimately like feeling really, really good about the decisions we make and really excited about the decisions we make, means that when we show up to play, we're giving it our all. We're showing up as the best versions of ourselves. We're not just going through the motions. We're doing it because we value the experience and we value the audience that's there. And so I think that perspective just completely changes the way you may otherwise approach it as like, yeah, we're playing another show, but we played like 4 other shows, like
Right.
in the same space in like the last month, right? It's just a different way of operating now. It's a different framework that we operate in.
Yeah, and just to add to your point, I think this idea of being guests in a space is like, I think we're very aware that like if someone's paying to see us, that means they're not paying to see another show somewhere else in wherever we're playing. So we've really tried to make a habit of like the bands that we play with being accommodated. Like we do have some like old timers, friends of ours that are still in bands play with us, but we've always tried to really have like current bands, usually younger bands, playing with us as well, and like hopefully give like them a little more
Of a platform.
platform. Thank you, that's the word. And but also just to like, for me, it's been very exciting because, as Billy said, like I had especially when I started my family and stuff, I was not going to shows as much and little detached from the scene. But since doing this, it's kind of brought me back into learning about new bands. And like I feel like every band camp Friday, by the time it comes around, I have this huge list of new bands that I want to check out, and it's been really cool for that. But it's we as long as we do this, we want to make sure that like we bring what's currently going on with us.
Yeah. It's definitely like a change in like your ethos, I'd say, in terms of approaching like playing shows again, which it seems to have like given you guys a sense of like self again in your music and like your playing. To your point of looking at bands and such, are there any new bands that you think are like paving a new way in any sense?
So most of who's playing, I'm glad we're playing tonight at Dilly Fest because the lineup I think is really, really good. My other band, Reds, played a show in New Jersey a couple months ago with this band, Kyande Amede,
Yeah.
who I absolutely love. Like that EP is just like amazing. They're awesome. And I'm biased because she's in our band, but 100 AU are amazing. Burial Dance is great.
Yep.
Trying to think.
I love Masanera.
Masanera,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. They're amazing.
They
There's-
blew me away when we played with them 2 years ago.
Well, they played the Philly show with us at the church,
Yep.
and whenever we play shows, I'm kind of like all over the place. So I try to watch the bands, but sometimes my head is just not in it because I'm thinking about our
Right.
show, our set, and whatever. But they had come to San Diego and had played the Shea Cafe, which is kind of like the ABC near Rio of San Diego.
Gotcha. Mhm.
And they were. I went there to go see them, and they completely floored me how
Yeah.
great they were. So I was glad that I got to like enjoy their set. So that's a band that I really love from the more current scene.
Yeah.
We'd be remiss not to mention No Man.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my.
We played after them. I remember at the fest we played in Toronto, the New Friends Fest this summer. They had 2 rooms operating, so when one room was finished, a band was starting in the other room. And so when we were setting up for our set, No Man was playing in the other room, and while we were able to set up quickly, and then we went to go check them out, and I just remember thinking like, man, we really got to play after this band, don't we? Like they were just
They were so good.
I was absolutely just gutted. Like they were just amazing.
Luckily, it's a different stage because they destroyed theirs.
They were just too much, and they're playing today
In the best way possible.
in the best way possible. Yeah,
Yes.
please, yeah, nothing but praise for No Man, and I love Zulu. I really love Zulu. Who else? I feel like we've played with so many that like were really, really great. We've been really fortunate.
Carry On Spring. Great
Carry On
band.
Spring,
Yeah.
yeah. Props to Carry On Spring.
And,
Good
We're
friends of
playing
ours.
with Oxiana Saint tomorrow and Stress Spells, and both of them are amazing. Oxiana Saint, I played a show with them, and I was telling them that they're like if you took like power metal like Judas Priest and Sunny Day Real Estate and smashed them together, you'd have
Yeah.
that band. They're so
Yeah.
good.
It's amazing, and that's why I say like I emphasize this idea of us sort of being guests, because it's when you go to your friend's house in school and you're like, I want to move in with you. This is the coolest. Like, you're so lucky to like live here. Like, this, you're so lucky that this is yours. I feel like the scene as it is now, the quality is just super high. I'm always blown away by what we end up seeing compared to what we had seen previously in a lot of cases, and things seem very healthy and vibrant and diverse and awesome. And so I think the music is reflecting that, and we're noticing it every time we play.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as like somebody who's, I would say, a part of it, it feels that way too.
Good.
Definitely feels that way.
Good.
It's always an issue of like, which show you want to go to in the weekends. There's so many happening because so many people just want to make music, and it's incredibly encouraged these days to just like pick up an instrument and just like, if you feel something or you want to make a riff or you want to write something, just do it and see what happens and share it with people. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, I also think, like, I mean, a lot of times, like, people, talk about the negatives of the internet, and God knows there are plenty. But I think when we were younger, it's like, the cool thing about punk was like, yeah, you learn 3 chords, you can be in a punk band, and that's good because it opens the gates, but it's bad because it opens the gates, and not everyone can play those 3 chords. But I feel like now the level of musicianship with a lot of the bands is just, at the age that they're at, is just so far beyond many of us back in the day. And I think part of that is just because now you can have a guitar teacher online or something like that, and
Watch YouTubes.
watch YouTube.
YouTube for
like,
sure.
It's
there's more resources now.
yeah,
Far more
exactly.
resources.
And I don't mean that in like back in my day, it's like,
Yeah.
but I think it's actually awesome because it's leading to more creation. And I think also, I joked about my son who's in college now. It's like he never learned the rules that if you listen to this music, you're not allowed to listen to that, which I think a lot of us, and we all have very varied musical tastes, but we still, I think, came up in a time where things were so separated. And I see so many bands now like mixing things that would not have been kosher back in the day, and I think it's amazing.
Well, and
It's
also
really
the
awesome.
idea of selling out, right, was such a big thing back in the day, and now that I think just doesn't exist anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you have these bands that are super respected in the punk scene, but then they'll, go do a Taco Bell commercial or something.
Yep.
Well, it's funny. I think it's like, whether you're a big artist or a small artist, I think everybody agrees that the music industry is barely relevant anymore.
Right.
That the real magic happens in these sort of micro local subcultures that don't have that segregation of genres. The music industry is what really fed into the music industry that we all grew up in. It's like, if you're a punk, you can't be a raver. If you're a raver, you can't be a punk. If you're into metal, you shouldn't go see the Cro-Mags. If you go see the Cro-Mags, you might get beat up at like an Exodus show. Well, no, you'd probably be beating the people up at the Exodus show. But nonetheless, there was this degree of, as these guys were sort of alluding to, there was this degree of segregation that I think turned a lot of people off to a subculture that they may have been amazing participants may have had a really active voice in a DIY scene if they would have just sort of been embraced and felt welcome. And I think that's where we really went wrong. It wasn't so much it was in addition to the other problems with diversity that Colin was alluding to earlier, I think there was also like a lack of artistic diversity, a lack of conversation across subcultures that I think is very prevalent now. We were talking about earlier how I have played the Electronic Music Monthly. That would never have been a thing, back when we were operating the first time around. It's like you had your friends that did this, but you did this. And sometimes you tried to mix and match and be polite, but it was sort of in a very dismissive way, whereas I think now people recognize similar value across subcultures, even though the sounds may be different. I think that there's an ethos in DIY culture where the DIY worlds sort of gravitate to one another in a way that they didn't before. And I think, a smaller community, a smaller global village, as it were, because of the internet, I think is what actually ultimately makes that possible.
And sometimes those lines are just completely arbitrary. Like you mentioned the Cro-Mags and Exodus. You listen to an early Exodus record or mid to late Cro-Mags record.
They sound like the same band.
It sounds the same thing. It's like, mods and rockers who both
Yeah.
love the Who beating each other up in Brighton. You know, it's like it's like really it's just like it's very tribal as opposed to actually
Yeah.
based on anything real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like the internet, the accessibility that it offers to quite literally seeing any music from anywhere in the world, you're almost you'd have to be like purposely avoiding listening to different genres to not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's impossible to not hear music that you like don't usually listen to because it's just always around. And it's funny hearing that back then it was very compartmentalized in the sense of like we don't associate and all that because nowadays it's I mean of course there's still going to be those like underlying trends of that in the DIY scene, but the amount of like shows I've gone to that have like a mixed bill of like a DJ set and then like I don't know like a hardcore band, like it just kind of like is a variety, and I think that's almost an expectation these days as opposed to what it was like before, which I find to be crazy honestly. Especially at the radio we push this message of like break down those barriers, like don't like get out of your box, you know. So I mean was a college radio like that back then in terms of music, or was it kind of just like if you like this come this time, or
Well, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say it was kind of like at the top of the show, you know, you were kind of promoting the gospel hour, right? So I think
Yeah.
it's just like I think that's just kind of the way that college radio almost works. It's like
Yeah.
you had the Crucial Chaos, the hardcore show, and then everyone would come hang out for that. But those kids that were coming to Crucial Chaos may not show up for the gospel hour to come hang
Yeah.
out. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah, yeah.
So
Makes
there
sense.
there is a little bit of that, but I just think that's a programming thing, and less
yeah,
of
yeah,
a
that's very true. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, after Crucial Chaos, for a while there was like a house music show. There was
yeah.
like a Neil Aline, who's like a really famous French DJ. He was the first promoter in New York to bring like Daft Punk over. He had Daft Punk at Twilo. They played on WNYU probably a night that we were there. You know, that would immediately follow Crucial Chaos in the next studio, and we would have this sort of interaction with those worlds, but we would never sort of socialize. Similarly, later on, there was a show that followed Crucial Chaos called The Halftime Show, which is now like an iconic New York City underground hip hop radio show. And the guys that ran that are now like big, you know, they're like career hip hop DJs that are, you know, have shows on like Sirius and stuff like that. So all of these things were happening at the time, and we were lucky to be in New York where it was the kind of like the biggest of the big for certain subcultures that we were, and I don't know that we recognized it as easily then as you do now in retrospect, and you're like, oh my God, I was like, Daft Punk was behind that wall, you know, playing
Yeah,
records
yeah.
like one night after, you know, Breakdown played in the studio at Crucial Chaos, like, but you know, again, it was just sort of segregated. It was like we're done in here, so they're starting in that studio. We left, and they came in, and we didn't. You know, there were a lot of missed opportunities, I think, in those times, just because of the way subcultures worked. You know?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. We are running into like our last 5 minutes, so my last question for you guys that I'm gonna ask is like, as college radio DJ, I definitely cater towards those DIY audiences. What, if any, advice would you give to like people trying to start bands, in bands, or like just in terms of like motivation and the creativity? What would you say if you could do it all again to yourself?
just play what makes you happy and don't be concerned if people are going to like it or not. Just do what feels good for you. And if it connects with people, it connects with people. And you can't make that happen no matter what you're trying to do. There's no formula to it, right?
Yeah.
When we were writing Saetia songs in 1997, we did not think like we would be sitting here in 2024 on you know, having a discussion about this. So it happened. The music we made happened to connect with people, and that's the only advice I could personally say is just if you're in a young band right now, just do what feels good to you, and you might be in 24 years sitting and discussing it, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It just practice. Like, I think I definitely fell trapped to this in my early days of like, you know, going back to like learning 3 chords and being able to play punk, like this idea that like, you know, craft was like the enemy, and it's like, no, it's like you could be an amazing jazz guitar player and still just play those 3-chord songs. But like, you want the options of having as much ability as you possibly can. So just practice. And I think there's something good about trying to play, doing experiments of trying to play like other artists and then screwing it up. And now you have something completely different, and that becomes what you're doing. And just going back to what Adam said, ultimately, like, just if you're passionate about what you're doing and you like what you're doing, then, other people are going to catch on. It might not be like, thousands of people, but, I'd rather be passionate about what I'm doing and playing to the 3 of you right now than, going through the motions with something I don't care about in front of more people.
Yeah, I'm going to hate myself for doing this, but
Well, we hate you.
I think I'll catch up to you guys.
Okay.
But I think, Rick Rubin, I think, said something really valuable, which is, no, I'm being serious. As hokey as this is, I'm going to say it anyway because I'm 47 and I've earned this right to say this. You do the audience a disservice by trying to please the audience. You please yourself first as a creative individual. Your creativity should be the priority, and the people that you're creative with should be the priority. When we wrote songs in 1997, we were trying to please ourselves. We got in a room because we enjoyed it, and we played shows because we enjoyed it. And when we didn't enjoy it anymore, we stopped doing it. And I think the real takeaway is to just do the things that you're passionate about, do the things that you enjoy, and not worry about what the world is going to think of it. If it's something that is sincere and genuine, the world will find it, and find it a lot easier now than they may have otherwise. And to just sort of follow that North Star, and the North Star should just be the process itself. The creative process should be the North Star. That's what will inspire you to practice. That's what will inspire you to have good relationships with people. Because when you're creative with people and vulnerable with people, that's when you really start to develop a kinship with them. And I think that reflects in whatever it is you're making. So make things for yourself, really. That's the best advice. And everybody is going to understand what that means in a different way. And it's the right way if it's the way that works for you.
I definitely think that vulnerability and creativity go hand in hand, which can be very scary for a lot of people, but I think it's very important to making music that's true to you. With that being said, we do have one more minute left, so I just want to say thank you guys so much for joining me in studio today. It has been a pleasure talking with you and getting all of your knowledge and 2 cents. To those listening, if you would like to catch them in Philly tonight, they will be playing Dilly Dally Fest at Underground Arts. They are the last band to go at, I think, 10:15. Yeah. So keep that on your radar if you're interested, and they will be playing in Jersey tomorrow, but sold out show, I've heard. So maybe you'll get lucky, who knows. But with that being said, this has been my interview with Saetia. My name is Liv, by the way, on WKDU Philadelphia 91.7 FM. Thank you again to Gregory Campbell for giving me an hour of his show. Not sure that he made a radio playlist, so I think we're going to tune into some Heart after this, or maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. But I hope you guys all enjoy your Saturday. And thank you guys once again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Liv.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you for having us.
Of course. All right, have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.